Time. Did you hear the story about the woman who was young and thriving and happy? She was 20 years old and she had just saved up for her very first car. So she bought her car. She was flexing, feeling good. She called up her friend, hey, I got a new car. You want to see it? And he's like, yeah, come on, let me see that car. She drives over to her friend's house and he comes out like, okay, you doing it? You pushing? And he's like, you know what? I got some friends over. Do you want to meet them? Come on over. She goes to meet the friends and she says hi and is polite to everybody. Eventually, it's time for her to go. So she's like, all right, I'll see you later. As she's walking out, one of the guys she just met comes up to her and is like, well, you got your new car. Why don't you give me a ride? And she's like, okay, he's kind of cute. So he gets into her car and they start talking. He's so polite, so sweet, just like the perfect gentleman. He asks for her phone number. And of course, she says yes. And they start seeing each other. They dating back and forth, having a good time. And about a month and a half afterwards, she gets a phone call from a random girl. She's like, hello. And the girl's like, yeah, I heard you seeing my man. And she's like, well, I didn't know that he was your man. He told me he didn't have a girlfriend. And the girl's like, I don't even care. Because you see my man, when I see you, I'm going to beat your ass. And she's like, oh my God. She hangs up. She goes to see the guy and tells him, you know, it's some girl calling my phone on some stupid stuff. And the guy's like, don't worry about it. She ain't going to do nothing to you. So she's just like, whatever. She decides not to talk to that guy anymore because she don't want to be caught up in drama. She got a lot to live for. Things are going well. She's just trying to be peaceful. As she's going about her life, just single, just doing what she needs to do, he keeps calling her back and calling her and texting her and calling her. And she's just like, what? And he's like, please see me. And she's like, no, I don't want to see you no more. I don't want to deal with that. Eventually, he wears her down and is like, just meet up with me just one time. Just meet up with me one time. Just hear me out. And she's on the way to go see her sister and her boyfriend and have lunch. But she's like, I'll just stop by there before I go see them. So she stops by to see him. He's all smiling, happy, open the car door, giving her a hug. And he's like, why don't you come inside for a second? And she's like, okay, even though she had a weird feeling. She goes inside the apartment and there's only one other guy in the apartment and he's sweeping the floor. She says hello and she sits down on the couch, pristine, with her purse. And all of a sudden they asked her, why don't you go to the kitchen for a second and grab something? And she's like, why would I go to somebody's kitchen? This ain't my house. But she's sweet, so she goes and does it. As she walks to the kitchen, she hears doors open, and she turns around, and these 4 girls came out the room, and they surrounded her. She's like, what is going on? She's confused, and then one of the girls walks right up to her and just punches her in the face. She kind of absorbs the shock and like stands there. And of course, this makes the girls mad. And they all start beating her down, punching her on the floor, punching her, kicking her. She's on the ground now with her arms over her face trying to shield herself. And she has no weapons and they're all just beating her, cursing at her, spitting on her, ripping her clothes off. And she's like, oh my God, she doesn't know what to do. Eventually, she hears a voice says, y'all stop, what y'all doing? And she opens her eyes a little bit and she can see that it was the guy who was originally there sweeping the floor. And he comes up there and he's like, nobody's going to bother you. Nobody's going to bother you anymore. Come on, go ahead. Get up. And when she puts her hands down and looks up at him, he takes his fist and punches it in her face. And she covers herself again as all the girls continue to attack her. They grabbing weapons. They trying to pull her pants down. And she hears somebody say, no, don't do all of that. Don't do all of that. And they just continue to punch her and kick her. Eventually, she hears somebody knock on the door and then everybody starts scrambling. She's still closed up with her eyes closed, covering her face because she doesn't know what's going to come next. And when the door opens, she hears somebody say, oh my gosh. And next thing you know, the person's coming up to her saying, relax. And she's trying to get up and they're like, no, just later. The ambulance is on its way. Once the EMT gets in there, as soon as he looks at her, he tells her, what happened to you? But she can't speak. She's too stunned. She doesn't understand what happened. She's never seen most of these people in her life. She's like, what is happening? They take her to the hospital. And while she's there, she's waiting for her mom to come because her mom works at the hospital. And when her mom sees her, she can tell her mom's trying to keep it together. Eventually, she manages to get up after they address all her wounds and things like that. And she goes to the bathroom. And when she sees herself, she starts to scream, oh my God. She's sitting in the hospital. Her mom's sitting with her, rocking back and forth. And then her cell phone rings. Her mom picks it up and is like, hello. And there's a girl on the phone saying, I'm so sorry. I didn't help you. It turns out that there were a lot of other people at that apartment. In fact, they were having a party before she got there. But because they were planning to hurt her, everybody went into the rooms. Now, a lot of the people came out to participate in the assault, but most of the people didn't. They just stayed in the room because they were scared that if they said something that the people would turn on them, so they didn't. And this girl was one of them. She was like, I should have did something. I'm so sorry. And the mom asked her, you need to go to the police to tell who did this. So she does. She goes to the police with her mom and identify everybody who was involved in the assault. And most of them get arrested except for one who was a minor. She doesn't get anything done to her. Well, now the girl who's going through the assault, she ends up having to get facial reconstruction surgery. The guy who lured her into the attack, he got 5 years. While he's in prison, he's calling her, not directly. He's getting other people to call her three-way and harass her over the phone. She ends up having to change her number so she can stop the attacks. 5 years goes by. And he finally gets out. They notify her, and she's like, oh my gosh, I hope this man don't come to see me. 6 months after he get out, she goes outside and her car's on fire. Next thing you know, her next car, the tires are slashed, the windows are blown out. This man is consistently stalking her and harassing her, trying to make sure she's miserable. She's sitting here right now to this day. She's going through PTSD and anger. She's trying to rationalize what's happening in her life and why God will allow this to happen to her. But the truth is, when people are miserable and hopeless in their lives and they see somebody thriving and happy, they become angry and they want to make them miserable too.